If you ever get to a point when you're learning a language where you just feel like you keep studying over your words, you keep messing up, he told me it's all a part of your brain rewiring itself. Once it's done rewiring, all of a sudden you're gonna see the major improvements out of nowhere.
And what would you say to somebody that wants to learn a language, but they're, initially afraid of taking that first step into the water?
What I would say is once you take that first step, after that, you start getting into the rhythm. I think that's the hardest part for some people because they don't know what to expect. But once you get started and once you start getting into the rhythm, once you start getting the hang of things, that's where you start having the fun. That's where you start thinking, wow, like it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Now, there are going to be moments where you're not going to be motivated every single day. There are going to be moments where you're going to feel like, man, like I just feel like I keep struggling, which is completely normal because that's happened to me.
Hey everybody, bienvenidos a On the Fringe. Bienvenue, selamat datang, 환영 합니다. We are talking today with a polyglot, David Ramos. So David is a graduate of the Bush School of Government and Public Service at Texas A&M University, and he holds the record at the Bush School for doing the OPI exam in how many languages? Was it 12, 13?
12.
12. So he did the OPI exam in 12 languages. Means he can speak 12
Damn.
languages, at least at an intermediate, mid, some at an advanced and a very, very high advanced level. So we're going to be picking his brain today about learning languages. This is going to be a fascinating talk. So, David, thanks a million for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank y'all so much for inviting me here. I'm excited to be here with y'all and talk about my experiences, my overall experience that I have when it comes to learning languages.
Well, yeah, dude, we're excited to hear it. And I guess starting out, so tell us a little bit about how and why you started going down this path of learning so many different languages.
Yeah, absolutely. So this started 10 years ago, and it's honestly very hard to believe that it's been 10 years that I've been doing this. I started when I was, yeah, 14, and I was only a freshman in high school. And at the time, it's pretty funny because like when I told my friends I was learning a language on my own at the age of 14, I had half of those friends say, "Oh, that's awesome," and then the others that kind of laughed at me and they're like, "Yeah, right." And me, I'm just like, this is just gonna be something that I do for fun. I started off with Portuguese, and honestly, I didn't, my intention wasn't to become fluent in it or anything. I just thought, oh, it'd be nice to have be at least conversational level. And I managed to pick it up in 6 months.
Oh,
The reason I got drawn to it was just because I went to a conference with my church who this band that was performing had went to Brazil, and I was looking at their channel and I was seeing them sing in Portuguese, and so that got my attention. I started to look up movies on YouTube that were in Portuguese. Started to listen to a lot of Brazilian music, and I would say that the way I started off with it was first off just learning the basic phrases and then from there playing around with Google Translate and making my own sentences. So just learning how to say everyday things, the things that I would say every day, such as I'm on my way to school, or I'm currently studying, or tomorrow I have this. Played around with Google Translate that way. Downloaded an app called Anygram where I met people from where you can choose what language you want to learn and it'll set it to where you meet people from the country that speaks that language. And I met a lot of people from Brazil, started to send a bunch of audios back and forth to each other. For me, it was something that was just very fun. It was very fascinating. And and yeah, in about 6 months, I picked it up pretty quick. And from there, that same method that I used for Portuguese, I applied it to French and then Italian. And then over the years, I just kept using the same method. And you could say that, at least for someone that speaks multiple languages, for polyglots, you could say that I started off with the quote unquote easy languages, such as Portuguese, French, Italian, and then from there I started to go up to languages that are not within the Romance branch. And so I started to do Germanic languages right when I was in, no, I was still in high school. I started off with German. And then I did Dutch when I was a junior in undergrad. Around that same time, I thought, you know what? Let me go ahead and kick it up a notch and do something completely different. Started to do Mandarin, started to do Japanese. And it wasn't until I went to the Bush School that I started to do more critical languages, so languages that are critical to the US government. So I started to do Arabic, and then I
Hmm.
started to do Korean. And for a while, I did start to do Russian, but um, I've kind of focused more on bettering the ones that I already speak. So such as I've been practicing a lot of Arabic, Korean, Mandarin, and then from there, just for fun, just because one of my professors, Professor Howell, he was telling me he was like, I want to see how many languages you can get, and so I threw in Afrikaans and I threw in Swedish just for fun, and then
Yeah, dude, I remember you were saying like you did Afrikaans for like 3 weeks, right? And you still managed to pass the OPI.
not even three
Not
weeks,
even three
not
weeks.
even. I probably looked at it. I think I scheduled the exam 3 weeks before,
Hmm.
and I told myself I
Hmm.
got 3 weeks. I didn't actually start studying it until like maybe a week before the exam. I looked at it maybe 2 or 3 times, and then the day of the exam was when I actually was like looking over everything. And I did it back to back so I took my Korean OPI, then I
Yeah,
had
I
like a
remember.
1.5 hour break, and then I went straight into Afrikaans. So I did two OPIs back to back.
Wow. I mean, you had prep for that though, because you done Dutch.
Yes, yeah, that's the thing. Dutch really helped me out because I did get an advanced low score in Dutch the
Oh,
year
wow.
before.
Okay.
So that helped me out. And so when I was studying it, it was kind of like an overlap. There were a few things that were different. When I took the exam, there were a few things that were like, oh wow, I didn't think of that. But I still managed to get I thought I was at least gonna get intermediate mid, but I still got an intermediate low, which is still pretty impressive. Learning, doing a studying a language a week
Yeah.
before and then
Yeah,
like
a day
cramming like an
before.
hour
That's
before.
incredible.
Yeah, I was fascinated.
Dutch is not an easy language, just to be clear to our listeners. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not, it's also, again, like the motivation is kind of fascinating to me, man, because I get the whole, I'm just going to do this because I can, because I'm at that level and it seems like fun. But, Dutch is one of those languages. Most people in the Netherlands speak English. So, like, whenever someone says, oh, Dutch would be a really interesting language, I'm like, I struggle to think of the situation in which I would ever need to use that language. That clearly wasn't a motivator for you.
Yeah, it was honestly Dutch wasn't even the language that was it was kind of a because I remember the only reason I actually started to pick up on it, it was towards the end of 2021.
Hmm.
At the time I was supposed to go to Spain, and I ended up getting COVID right before my flight.
Oh,
So I
man.
was in my room for about maybe a little bit less than a week. And I was like, man, well, if I got to be quarantined, like I managed to, the airline managed to work it out with me. They said just test
Hmm.
again in a couple of days. If it's negative, then we'll reschedule, then you can leave the
Hmm.
day after you get your negative exam. So I was like, okay, that's cool. So I was literally in my room with just Netflix, and that's all I did all day, and I watched the movie on Netflix that was in Dutch, and I put the subtitles on. And I was like, "Yo, like, I'm starting to pick up on this. Has a little bit of German, has a little bit of English,
Yeah.
and it was just I didn't even plan it. Like, I just me being quarantined, I'm just like, you know what? Let me just go ahead and start picking it up now that I have all this time.
Well, yeah, it's like you've
That's
got the time and you've
awesome.
got the building blocks too, where it's like you understand, okay, it's a Germanic language. You've studied German, there are going to be cognates that you can kind of recognize. And then you've built up in your brain how to structure a language because you have so much experience of learning the
Yeah,
languages. So it's like you can just subconsciously throw it together, man. That's incredible.
thank you, thank you. It's definitely like when you do it one time, you can do it again and again and again, and then once I started to do the more difficult languages, those approaches were a bit different. I had to be a little bit more strategic,
Hmm.
and I had to put in a lot more practice, a lot more drills, a lot more just overall really just digging deep, a lot of immersion. being really immersed in
Yeah.
it because those languages are way more difficult. And I think with Korean, that was the one that I really at first I thought I had it. When I took my first OPI for Korean, I failed it and I was kind of bummed out. And so when I did it again, I did like a full-on immersion over the summer, just listening to Korean music, watching K-dramas, watching Squid Game in Korean and just following along with the subtitles. And then a couple months later when I took the exam, it was like, "Oh wow, like this is actually going a lot better than the previous one." And I got a passing score. I got intermediate low, which I was like shooting for intermediate mid, but I was like, okay, at least I improved a lot. So that's
Yeah.
my next approach when I do languages. So I'd like to do Russian, I'd like to do Hebrew, I'd like to do
Hmm.
Farsi. I could have had 13 OPIs had they offered Catalan, but they don't offer Catalan, so um that one I could have got a minimum advanced low in if they offered it.
Yeah, I don't think that's a critical language yet.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. That one's
Asterisk.
but
since it's
Asterisk
just
on
like
that
such a
yet.
regional language, like a language that's spoken in just one region in Spain, that they don't have anybody to provide that. Which
I mean, I hope there are not any Dutch people listening to this, but that's almost as bad as Dutch. I mean, that's another one where if you go, I mean, most people listening to this are going to go Catalonia, Barcelona.
yeah,
Well, if you go to Barcelona, well, first of all, everyone in Barcelona speaks English, but also most of the people in Barcelona, I'm not going to say they don't speak Catalan because a lot of them do, but their first language is generally Spanish. So that's a kind of it's impressive as hell. I'm not going to sit here and go, oh, that sounds easy because it doesn't. But that's kind of a far flunger for sure. That's wild, man. I just want to say I'm impressed by. I mean, not only do you go, okay, romance. I mean, none of these languages are easy. Like you said, Portuguese was easy. My experience of Portuguese is that it's of all the romance languages, not that easy. But to go to Chinese, Korean, and Arabic, wow. Because those are not, I mean, Chinese and Korean, okay, they're in the same region, but they're not in the same language family. Arabic, that's a Semitic language. It's very different than everything else you've been learning. What was that like?
yeah. It was. I remember my final semester at the Bush School. That's when I would say the last year at the Bush School was the year that I did all the critical languages.
Hmm.
Aside from Swedish, aside from Afrikaans, um, I did Japanese first, and I did study in Japan for about a month. So I
Okay.
had some preparation for that. I was already immersed in it, and I was practicing a lot with anime. I was practicing a lot with my friends that are from Japan, just sending a bunch of audios to each other. But then when I went to Arabic, because I did Arabic and then I did Mandarin, and the switch from that was just
Oh
way
my
like a
God.
Yeah,
completely
that's got
different
to be
approach.
incredible because it's the grammar is completely different, the culture is completely different, everything.
Everything's different.
Yeah. Yeah, like it was definitely one heck of a change. And I do pretty proud of myself for making that adjustment because I remember I was studying
Yeah.
Arabic for so long and when I scheduled my OPI, I was practicing weekly with a professor from the Bush School, not the Bush School, from main campus at A&M, and we would Zoom for about 30 minutes. We would talk. At first, I struggled. Towards the OPI, I started to get a lot better at it, and then I can still remember the week of my OPI. I had a presentation I had to do for my diplomatic negotiations class and I spent that whole weekend working on that presentation and I completely like did not touch Arabic at all. And so when Monday came around, I realized I'm like, oh snap, all my improvement. I did my presentation and then I went straight into the OPI right after. Maybe had like a 30-minute break, just put my headphones on, was just going over everything. And I still like it was a rough exam. I kind of thought I did bad, but I still managed to score intermediate mid, so higher than Japanese, higher than Mandarin, and higher than Korean. And then after that, I finally was like, now it's time to do Mandarin. And that's when I started to practice with an FBI linguist who was doing sessions at the Bush School. And so it was just and then all of a sudden I had to get used to a different grammar structure, but the grammar was actually easier. The tones was the one that kicked my butt. Doing the tones in Mandarin,
Yeah.
one, I really, I mean, I got it knocked out, but coming from a language such as Arabic that has a completely different writing script, you start from
Hmm.
right to left.
Hmm.
The grammar's a lot more complicated. There are no tones. It was just, I'm not gonna lie, it was, the transition, it was not as difficult as I thought it was going to be. Like my mind just naturally readjusted, like, oh, different environment. All right, let's switch. And my brain automatically just went from Arabic mode to Mandarin mode.
Wow.
Wow. I can say, having not learned both of those languages, not a walk in the park for anybody. I mean, good Lord. And yeah, and you're going from just two very different structures, particularly if you're coming from an Indo-European language. Those are kind of the two really big non-Indo-European languages. Yeah, I mean, and yeah, I spent 3 years getting my ass kicked by the tonality, so don't worry about it. That's just, that's wild. So Russian coming up, Farsi coming up, Hebrew you mentioned. Uh, how is your style? I mean, you've mentioned this somewhat, but was that shift in style and approach? You said that some of it was conscious, but have you also just sort of organically changed how you approach languages over that time?
Yes, so when I started to do the more difficult languages, I actually started to because with the romance languages, it was all just looking at the screen and playing with Google Translate. My approach with
Hmm.
languages such as Japanese, Mandarin, Korean, and my approach that I'm going to do with Russian as well, with Farsi, with Hebrew, is that I actually got a notebook and actually started to do drills and writing it out. And I know a lot of
Hmm.
people don't have the patience to do that, but it's one of those things that it's like if you want to learn it, if you're passionate about it, then it's something that you are going to do if it's going to help. And it definitely, just because I've heard all these things that it's like the more you write it down, the better you retain it. And that's the way I started to do with Arabic, doing all these drills. And at the time I did take an Arabic course on main campus at A&M, and I would say it helped a lot. It helped a lot just taking some time to write it all down and then reading short stories and
Hmm.
basically kind of approaching it like the way you like a little kid would. Because when a kid is born, they don't automatically just start speaking fluent Korean, fluent Russian, or anything. They have to start off small, and I think that's the problem that most people have nowadays. And I've seen it. I've seen it at the Bush School with people that struggle, that they approach it the wrong way. And with hard languages such as Arabic, Mandarin, all the critical languages that are important to the US government, is that you have to approach it from that point where it's like you start off as if you were a child and then move up from there. And so I started off by reading short stories to all of a sudden reading advanced things, such as maybe reading something in Arabic on Al Jazeera. And
Hmm.
then that's been my approach on doing critical languages and the approach that I'm going to do with these upcoming ones that I plan to learn.
Well, dude, I think you've built a really good foundation. And I mean, you kind of touched on this a minute ago, but the key is, from my understanding of learning languages, is discipline. And you've built up the discipline to go, okay, I'm going to take these easy wins at first, and I'm looking at this from a long-term perspective, where I'm not just going to throw myself into Al Jazeera in Arabic and go, okay, I'm going to learn how to read this in 3 days. And you've got to build those building blocks, and you'll get there at some point, but you're not just throwing yourself into the deep end and going, oh, I can't do it. It's too hard. You're slowly working your way in, and you're dipping your toes into the language, and you're building your confidence with every step. And I think like that's the key from my understanding. And when I've learned languages, like that's been the best way to do it. And I mean, what would you say to somebody that wants to learn a language, but they're, initially afraid of taking that first step into the water?
What I would say is something I would say if like, t taking that first step is once you take that first step, after that, you start getting into the rhythm. And that's the hard I think that's the hardest part for some people is getting started because they don't
Mhm.
know what to expect. But once you get started and once you start getting into the rhythm, once you start getting the hang of things, that's where you start having the fun. That's where you start thinking, "Oh, wow, like it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be." Now, there are going to be moments where you're not going to be motivated every single day. There are going to be moments where you're going to feel like, man, like I just feel like I keep struggling making this sentence or learning this vocabulary word, which is completely normal because that's happened to me where I'm doing good for like a month and then all of a sudden the second month I'm screwing up left and right, retaining vocabulary or making or learning the grammar. But that's all a part of your brain rewiring everything. And it's funny because when I was it was 2018, I went to Italy for a school trip, and our tour guide was also a polyglot. He spoke English, he spoke Italian, Dutch, French. What other languages did he speak? He spoke a little bit of Spanish, and I think he spoke maybe one or two more, but he was a polyglot as well. And then he found out that I at the time spoke five languages, and we began to talk with each other, and he gave me this advice too. He was like, if you ever get to a point when you're learning a language where you just feel like you keep studying over your words, you keep messing up, he told me it's all a part of your brain rewiring itself. Once it's done rewiring, all of a sudden you're gonna see the major improvements out of nowhere.
Mm.
So it's all about trusting the process. It's all about taking it step by step. If you feel like you maybe took too much of a big step and you think, oh wow, this is too complicated, well, take a step back, master that area first, and then continue after that. But don't just automatically take a big step and all of a sudden it's too hard and you just want to give up because it's like you need to first do it step by step. A lot of people want to take big steps, but you can't always do that because there's going to be some people might be able to, but others might not. Everybody's different when it comes to doing it, and it also depends on the language that you're picking up. And so somebody might be able to do it in Spanish, and that same person might try to do the same approach in Arabic, but you can't do that. You have to do it little by little. Each language you have to approach it differently. Each person, some people might struggle with languages more than another person, and so they have to take even more baby steps. But it's all about just being consistent, taking it one step at your own pace. Don't look at somebody else and say, "Well, wow, like I want to speak to his level. I want to speak at his level. Tomorrow I'm going to go from reading short stories to reading news article at advanced vocabulary." Before you get there, you have to first master where you are, then take it one step at a time.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head where it's a self challenge, and it's something for you to do for yourself to improve your life. And what are some things that you've seen from learning languages? Like, how has this actually impacted your life?
I've seen it impact my life by no matter where I go. So whether I'm here in Houston, whether I travel abroad, I'm able to communicate with a lot more people, like from anywhere. I'm getting like, let's say I'm on vacation in Europe. I hear somebody speaking a language that I know. It's like, I don't know, I just feel like the world is a lot more open to me, more accessible. That there is no barriers to me. I can go up to different people from different countries. I can talk to all of them in comparison to somebody that only speaks English and can't talk to any of them because of that barrier. And so my mind is a lot more open, and I'm a lot more open to getting to know other cultures. I'm not I'm not just interested in my own, but I'm interested in other people's cultures as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's great, man. Again, thank you so much for coming on. This has been just a fantastic conversation, and particularly like that last bit, your advice. I think that's the
It's
gold
sage level.
standard, man.
It's sage level.
It
It really is.
is. It really is.
Thank you.
And again, just thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for coming on and visiting us On the Fringe. I need to work on my language abilities, heaven knows. But yeah, if you have enjoyed this and you would like to hear more from David or us, or just send us a comment, like or subscribe, please do so on our Substack or wherever you listen to this podcast. Um, Again, thanks for coming on, David. And Dave, you
Me
know
or
what time
David?
it is.
Which one?
You, Mas Davis.
Yeah, Mas Gavin, lagi apa?
I forgot the Bahasa for button, but
Selesai.
buttons. Telasai sekarang.
Okay, engartos.
I don't know. That's Javanese, isn't it?
It's Sunda.